So I left school at 16, and I started a bricklaying apprenticeship. You kind of really had to want to do it, though, because I got paid 33 bucks a week, and I could have been unemployed for 30 bucks a week. But towards the end of the apprenticeship, I'm building a house for this lovely lady, and she says to me, look, I want you to meet a friend of mine. He works in an architect studio, and I think it would be good for you to have a conversation with him, kind of understand how you could get out of the rougher end of the building game and into something that would, you know, give you less blisters. I think it was kind of a lovely thing to do, but she kind of did it because the same morning when I turned up at her house, her dog Duffel had pissed in my boots. He kind of ran running up to me, put his paws on my chest and just fucking let it all go. And it went straight into the top of my boots. The irony is, she made all of this homemade soup, and she would just keep bringing it out to me all day long, and I couldn't eat it. So I just used to feed it to Duffel, and that's what Duffel was so excited about. So I got to meet this guy, and everything went a lot better than I thought it would be. He kind of is excited about the prospect of having somebody work in his studio who actually knows how to build. So he offers me a job, which was great, and then the government kind of fucked it all up. Not happy that I felt they'd kind of perfected the recession during my childhood. They triggered another one, and I was kind of last in, first out, and I was back out on the street. And from there, I kind of did anything and everything that I could do to earn money. I would do bricklaying when I could. I packed boxes of jeans. I packed boxes of shirts. I laid tennis courts for a while. I laid roads. I was a waiter at wedding receptions. I was even a strippogram for a little while. That's another story. And I kind of lived a relatively entertaining existence in London during the early 90s. I think I was probably coming up to about 24, and then I had what I suppose is like delayed male maturity kick in. 24, I was like, I kind of probably should get my shit together, really, and do something serious. And if I don't do it now, it's never going to happen. I'd been going out with a girl prior to this, and she worked in the advertising industry. And I'd been along to a couple of ad agency dudes with her. Seemed like it was my jam. It was quite good fun. And everybody I spoke to did not seem to be qualified in shit. And frankly, now I work in the advertising industry. That's a fact. No one's fucking qualified in anything. And at the time, I thought I could draw, and so I was like, you know, I could be a creative. So with no more logic than that, I thought I'm going to go get myself a job in Adland. And I knew that I'd probably need a piece of paper, so I found this business college in Covent Garden. And on a Saturday, they ran this course, Communications, Advertising, and Marketing. Can't really argue with that as a piece of paper. So I signed myself up for it. It was good because I could still work on site Monday to Friday. And I got cracking on this course. At around about the same time, there was a guy called Brian Smith, and he's working in an ad agency, and he's trying to hire new folks. And he's kind of bored with having to pay recruiters 15% every time he brings a new person on board. Because unbeknown to me, the system was a little rigged towards the privileged, really. You left university, you signed on with a recruiter, and then when ad agencies wanted new people, they'd go see the recruiter, take the kids with the best grades, and that's really how you got in. He had this young woman that worked for him, and she was aware of this college that I was going to, and he said, look, there must be a different way to do this. Go down to that college, see if there's anybody that's any good, and let's get them in for an interview. So Brian's kind of the catalyst for the change, but the big difference was the guy who was my lecturer. He said to me, look, there's this interview come up, and I want you to go and see this guy. You are not going to get a job, just to be clear. Clearly, I love faith in me. But he said, like, it's kind of a fucking ridiculous situation you're in. Everyone in this class works in the ad industry from Monday to Friday, except for you. You're a bricklayer Monday to Friday, and then you come here and you try catch up. Just go see this guy, ask some questions, and it'll help bring you up to speed with everybody else. I said, great, when is it? Gives me a date and says, just take your CV. I said, what the fuck is a CV? No one asks for your CV on a building site. You turn up, you start, they watch you for a while. If you're a bit slow or you're a bit shite, they just say, you need to fucking leave. And there's something kind of pure about it. So he says to me, look, your CV is just a history of what you've done. What have you done? So I've given him this potted history of where I've been so far. And he kind of jumps on the fact that I messed around in an architect studio. And he crafts me this amazing CV that makes it look like my bricklaying was some kind of fucking work experience program for my architecture degree. And then he said to me, what do you do for hobbies? We need to talk about your hobbies. And at the time, I was kickboxing out of a gym in Peckham in southeast London. I was trying to do it competitively, but in honesty, I was getting my ass kicked on a regular basis. But I kind of loved it. And he's like, I'm not fucking saying you fight. I'll say you're a boxing enthusiast. So he writes this CV for me. I borrowed a shirt from my best friend Gav, and I went off to see this guy. When I get there, it turns out it's not actually a creative agency, it's a media agency. There's a whole industry within the ad industry, and the job of these folks is to work out who exactly should be annoyed with an ad, then go away, buy the airtime, buy the pages, so these little commercial works of art go inside, and then, you know, convince you to buy shit you don't need, Drew. Running machines. And so I've gone in, he's opened up my CV, and he sees that I'm a boxing enthusiast. And so's he. So we sit there, and for about 35 minutes, we're just having conversations about old fights, my failing kickboxing career. And then he explains to me what a media agency does, and I have no fucking idea what he's talking about. And he said, do you know how to use a computer? And I said, I'll be honest, if you asked me to turn that thing on, I would have no idea where to start. And he pulls up an Excel spreadsheet and puts some numbers in, automatically adds them up, and I'm like, that's fucking amazing. And that's kind of where it ended, really. He then takes me for a walk around the agency. I wrote him a little note afterwards, thanked him very much, and I didn't expect to see him ever again. And about 2 weeks later, he calls me. And he says, I want you to meet me. Got a proposition for you. Meet me in this restaurant on New Oxford Street. Now, I'd never fucking been to a restaurant in London, ever. So I don't care what the proposition is, I'm going to the restaurant. And I turned up, and it's kind of, unfortunately, it's a Greek restaurant. Not because I don't like Greek food, but the menu is literally in Greek. And I have no fucking idea what I'm looking at, but I do recognize pound signs, and I don't want to take the piss out of the guy, so I'm going to get the cheapest starter, cheapest main, cheapest dessert. We ordered some food, and then he gets straight into it. He says, look, I'll be honest, tells me again about media agencies, tells me again about the kind of farce of trying to hire new people, and it doesn't work. And he said, I want to try something different. I want to prove that you can take someone off the street and you can teach them to do this job better than anybody else. And he said, and he was kind of honest about it, he said, frankly, I wouldn't fucking speak to you at all. You are about as far away from anybody I would normally interview. You fight and you're a bricklayer, okay? But that makes you perfect for this. He said, we're going to call it a social experiment. And I'm like, the appeal for me is pretty easy. I've spent the bulk of my life working outside, doing manual work with hairy-ass dudes. I'm going to be working indoors, no hairy-ass dudes, plenty of women, and I'm like, my 24-year-old self is like, I'm going to bang a few of these birds, and I'll probably drink their fucking beer tab, and 3 or 4 weeks I'll be back on site. Let's do it. And so the very first 2 weeks, I kind of had to dress the same every day, because Gav and myself, we didn't have a lot of additional clothing, so every day I'd go to work in this shirt, I'd go home, I'd wash it, dry it overnight, iron it in the morning, and I'd go to work in the same shirt. To start with, they put me with this guy, Tim. You're kind of an assistant for, I don't know, 9 months, maybe a year when you start in an ad agency. And they put me working with this guy, Tim, and week one was kind of a crash course in technology, I think. Tim says, look, I want you to write these summaries of all these nutrition articles for a client, which is unfortunate because that meant typing and on a computer. And it was fair to say I was not a natural. I remember typing away, and I made a misspelling. I'd fucked up a word, and I said to this girl sitting next to me, how do I correct that? And she said, that button there, that backspace button. And so I backspaced, and the little cursors moved through this word. I'm like, it's fucking genius, it's great. And the next day, Tim's like, where's that summary? I know you finished it. I was like, I did, man, but I read it back. And in the first paragraph, there was a fucking typo, so I had to backspace all the way through the fucking thing until I got back to that word, and then I've got to fucking write it again. And I remember at the time thinking, like, these computers are fucking bullshit. There's no way this thing is faster than just writing. And surprisingly, nobody asked me to leave that day. And they were very, very patient with me. I was still kickboxing at the time, and I came in one day. I'd clearly been punched in the face a lot. And because my eyes, my eyebrows split. I've got these kind of right angles here where I don't think they sanded my face off properly while I was being made. And so when I get hit in the face, they kind of split, and it looked a little nasty. And Brian looks at me and he's like, if this fucking works out, you need to make a choice, okay? Because I'm not taking you to a client looking like that. The weird thing was, on week 3, Tim gets fired. I've no idea why. And Brian said, look, come and have a chat with me. I think you're pretty good with numbers, and I want you to negotiate these pages in these newspapers. I think it might be you. And the way that the media industry worked at the time is kind of like share trading markets. There's lots of people like screaming at each other, shouting numbers down phones, spending insane amounts of other people's money. And he's kind of explained to me how you negotiate. And it's really simple. You're trying to predict how many people will read a paper, watch a TV show, and then determine the price that you want to pay for that. It's your job to get that price as low as you can. It's the guy on the other end of the phone to get it as high as he can. So he showed me how to calculate these numbers, and first paper I've got a call is a paper called the Daily Telegraph. It was kind of easy. It was on a deal, and I just put it to bed. The next one, though, is a paper called The Sun. And The Sun, a Murdoch paper, is the highest circulating newspaper in the UK at the time. I rung up, introduced myself to this guy. He is clearly offended as all fuck that some newbie thinks that he's going to get on the phone and negotiate with the biggest newspaper. And he's being a real arsehole to me. I, in hindsight, think it was probably some working class bullshit that started to get me riled up. I'm thinking there's this fucking private schoolboy on the other end of this phone calling me an insignificant arsehole, and I've just laid into this motherfucker. And I'm fucking screaming at him. I'm trying to do what Brian told me to do, and I'm trying to do fast math, but I'm gonna fucking rip his head off and shit down his neck. And I'm fucking coming for this guy. And we've eventually agreed on a price, and I've slammed the fucking phone down. And now I'm absolutely shitting myself because I've just paid £37,000 for this page in The Sun. Now, I have never fucking said £37,000 in my life, let alone spent £37,000. So I've gone in to see Brian. I'm like, I've really fucked up. I need you to call The Sun. I explained what happened, but I said the guy was being really aggressive, and it's kind of hard to lose your shit and do math at the same time. And I just need you to call and fix it. And he's like, get me the confirmation, and then we'll see what we got to do. So I've had to call this arsehole back, and then go and stand at the fax machine and contemplate, how do I maintain some dignity and get thrown out of this place at the same time? And I've gone back to see Brian, given him the fax. He's looked at it, and he says, come with me. And he grabs a chair, and then we walk out onto this floor, and there are, it felt like hundreds of traders on this floor, and he's just shouted across this floor to get everybody's attention. Puts the chair down, and he said, get on the chair. And then he waves his fax in the air, points across the room, and he said, this fucking guy has just paid £37,000 for a page in The Sun. And I'm sitting there just waiting for the humiliation. And then he's just pointed across the room and gone, none of you fuckers have ever managed to pay £37,000 for a page in The Sun. And he looks up at me and he's like, son, you're a fucking trader, you're hired. And I've kind of been lucky. It's carried on from there. I've been really fortunate. I have worked all around the world. Most recently, one of the greatest creative agencies there is had me start an agency in New York City, and that's going really well, kicking ass and taking names. And I'm not entirely sure. I was trying to think of what the moral of this story is, but I think it's pretty simple. Whatever they put in front of you, just say yes and fuck the consequences, because you can always make another decision another day.
Big games, everybody.